in 3, and in 2, and in 1. And welcome to FrameCast number 28, everybody. I hope you guys are having a great week. Today, we're doing things a little bit different, aren't we, Drew?
Yes.
Right. So that was the FrameCast. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was FrameCast number 29. I hope to see you guys all next week. It was very intelligent.
Yeah, no. So for everyone's benefit, doing the FrameCast highlights has been really difficult for both of us, especially Michelle, because we are all over the place. You know, we don't stick to any one coherent point, and sometimes we ramble on and rail into different things entirely. It makes it really difficult. So the whole idea is that we're going to do some prep first on what the topic is, what the introduction is, so on and so forth, before we actually do this, just to make the FrameCast highlights a little more comprehensive.
I love Pixel Piranha just joined in chat. Today we're talking about games that are being delayed, like Cyberpunk 2077, which is like the main game which we're talking about. Hence, we're streaming in this category. So I love that you came into this stream expecting it to be out. It's not. It's still out until September. But yeah. Just what we try to do here on this show on the FrameCast is we're trying to break into new ideas. We're trying to dig a little bit deeper than we're comfortable with sometimes, which often means that as we're trying to formulate these ideas, we're not entirely sure of them, so we're formulating them as we speak. As a result, what often happens is that I notice with myself that I'm bringing up a question and then continuing on to answer that question, and I'm posing 5 different questions to Drew, of which he can obviously only answer 1. So my focus in this FrameCast, going forward now, is to just be focused on like one topic at the time, one thing at a time, so that we break the things down step by step, and it doesn't become a giant mess. That being said, let's get into FrameCast number 29. This week we're going to be talking about Cyberpunk, of course. Cyberpunk got delayed, as well as, I think, Marvel's Avengers and Final Fantasy VII's remake. They were all announced to be released earlier on this year, and they're going to be delayed. Well, at the same time, we've also seen a bunch of games that have been rushed over recent times. I think that Anthem stands to reason. I think that Warframe has had its fair share of rushing in the all too recent times. But what does that necessarily mean? When it comes to delaying a game, releasing a game, what should be the right approach? And what can we learn from the games that are being delayed right now? So, to start off, Xeno, how do you feel about Cyberpunk being delayed by a couple months?
So, I feel it's a neither here nor there situation, right? It's really difficult because in some instances you have games that get delayed by months, if not years, literal years. And as a result, the game is not better for it in the slightest, right? And I think I've just answered one of my questions.
But when it comes to Cyberpunk itself, when you heard the announcement, how do you feel about it?
Unfazed, really, like realistically. Yes, I want to play Cyberpunk. Yes, I planned on upgrading my PC the month of April for its release. But at the same time, I didn't think it was like the end of the world.
No.
Right? So I have heard from some content creators, namely Jacksepticeye. I was watching one of his videos, and he actually named that Cyberpunk 2077. I think it was... No, sorry, it was the Marvel Avengers game by Crystal Dynamics, published by Square Enix. That was going to get delayed, and he expressed concern. If you are familiar with Crystal Dynamics' work, you know that they have done the reboot to the Tomb Raider franchise, and they've also been the pioneers, except for the first game, of the Legacy of Kain series, right? So they've been a studio that worked under IDOS for the longest time ever before they were merged with Square and eventually became Square Enix. And yeah, so I have faith in Crystal Dynamics' performance, and I think that they will produce a good piece of work. Yes, they've also produced some shoddy games as well, like Gex, the Gecko, and
So, what's the main concern when it comes to games being delayed?
well, I feel that in the past, when a game is being delayed, it often leads to a bad game, right? So I'm going to give you some examples. For any of you that are old enough, we are talking about, oh gosh, I even have it written down. Duke Nukem Forever, and even later still, Daikatana. Right, both games by 3D Realms, and Duke Nukem was a game that saw the end of 3D Realms. Right, so Duke Nukem was in development for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Borderlands was in development for 8 to 10 years before it eventually came out. Yeah. And like I remember reading magazines and things that was, previewing Borderlands and stuff. And I think they spent the majority of the time trying to finalize what Borderlands was going to be before they actually release it. And now they're able to produce it so much faster because they have a benchmark for what the game franchise is. Yeah. So I think personally, with CD Projekt Red and the performance that they have done with the Witcher franchise and stuff like this, I think that there is nothing to worry about with Cyberpunk 2077. What say you?
Well, I think that a delay is not necessarily something which people choose for. So it arises from a situation, and we can go into the reasons as to why such a situation can arise, because I think that's interesting as well. However, I think that when faced with either releasing something at the date of launch or releasing something later, which is a complete product, I'd rather go with a complete product. And I think that in the case of Cyberpunk, well, Cyberpunk is really, it has the legacy to back up that it has made some really good games. But I think that with any game, if the alternative is to release a broken, half-developed version at launch date, I'd rather take a delay. Of course, I wouldn't like to take a delay to begin with, but if faced with an opportunity or faced with a choice at hand, I'd rather take a delay.
So, sorry, I've had something that's like quite spicy, and as a result, my throat's constant. Yeah, it's gross. Sorry, I apologize, everyone. Right, so one question I have for you is how much of a negative impact on a game's image is had by you? Oh my god, this wording of this question is right. From your perception, right? How bad is it if a game announces it's going to be delayed?
Honestly, not so bad. And that might be because I've grown up with Warframe and all the delays that it had. But especially when it comes towards a game which I'm kind of anticipating on coming out, but is either a new installment or a brand new game, it is something on which you haven't begun yet. So it's just postponing the thing that you're anticipating, but you know it will come eventually. And I'm very much of the mindset like, well, I got other things to do in the meantime. I'd much rather have a delay. I really do not mind that it's being pushed out a couple of months, because I think I would be much more negatively affected if it would be released in a broken state. I really dislike that.
Out of interest, have you played any games that were delayed, maybe even Duke Nukem Forever, to the point of this is still just a bad game?
I don't remember necessarily. I think that for me, one of the things which jumps to mind, like a lot of my mind space has been with Warframe for the last couple of years, especially when it comes to games which I really eye on release. The rest kind of like things pop up, but they only pop up when they're released for me. Cyberpunk is the really big separate game where I'm like looking forward to it as it's being developed. But when it comes towards Warframe, the delays, like, I don't know how comparable it is, but in a sense, it's like because it's a game which is constantly being played, it might be a difference because you're in it and not necessarily something which is like a separate piece which you're waiting for, which you haven't begun eating yet. You haven't begun eating the pie yet, whereas the other one, you're still in the middle and you're trying to wait until like the final piece of the pie is served, and you're like, dang it, it's not coming. But what I find with Warframe is that whenever it comes to delays that take a long time, it really sucks. However, the difference between a like 2-month delay and a 8-month delay aren't as big as having a 4-month delay and then having something released in a broken state. I think that if a delay causes something to be released in a finished state, I'm totally fine with it. I will forget the delay. But if it then also releases in a broken state, then I think that it adds on to the negative feeling. Like, not only was this delayed, but even you took more time and it's still not finished. Like, what's going on?
It's really interesting because I feel that in some instances with game development, a game can come from a concept, but the concept isn't fully flushed out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I think that we've seen that with something like Railjack within Warframe, where they're showing off an idea and you'll see it change over the development cycle a lot because this thing, which was really cool to show off, doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah. I hate to agree with you, but I do. Another instance is Anthem. I'm really sorry. I keep coughing. I'm sorry. Let me. Hopefully that will stop it. Right. Another instance is Anthem. Right. So Anthem was first teased in 2013, really early on, and it looked swanky as hell. Right. But the problem was that the developers didn't know what game they were making until they saw that demo live at E3. That's really bad, right? If your development team does not know what product they're making, it's you're probably too old, but anyone that's actually seen it, the old Dilbert cartoon that was released early in the 90s, they literally had this problem. They were trying to make a device when they didn't know what they were making, and all they had was a name, right? I mean, typically you name something at the end of the project's lifespan, not at the beginning. Regardless of that, and I feel that this is the case that happens with some games, right? So, we need a game, we need to make it cool and edgy. We need to target some market. What market are we targeting? Oh, we haven't decided yet. We'll get there later on, and things like this. And it's difficult. What are you supposed to do? I mean, I feel that often is at the wrath of a publisher. But if the publisher lets you do too much of your own thing, you'll end up with situations like Daikatana and Duke Nukem Forever. Like, can we put up a poll asking people, have you played Duke Nukem Forever? Because if I can get like a better example, like Anthem, but Anthem didn't suffer the wrath of the developers; it suffered the wrath of the publishers. So I don't feel it's too fair to make a comparison. But basically, it's Warframe has this with Railjack. I don't like to shit on it, but they wanted it out as soon as they could, and they released it too soon.
I think when we're looking at what I'm hearing so far from you, the big concern, and also what I'm seeing in chat here, is that people dislike it, or you dislike it, when something is delayed and then still ends up being a mess, either because of the publisher's interference or because the idea didn't work out and it's just in development hell until like finally they're like, well, it needs to be out, here you go. And the thing that everyone's been anticipating on is just shit. And it's just been postponed. I think that a lot of this comes down to what we talked about in the very first FrameCast, and that is the overhyping. In the sense of announcing things very early. Now, I want to be very careful in this because we often talk, or like you often talk about the pressure from the publishers, but at the same time, I also think that we should give equal criticisms towards the complete opposite side of that, which is the enthusiasm of the developers.
I can comment to that, right? So sorry, I hate to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Right. Blizzard Entertainment, right? They always had the motto of, it will be out when it is ready. Yeah. And when it was ready, it was always a shining example of that genre, right? Warcraft 3, StarCraft 2, Diablo 3. People like ragged on the launch of Diablo 3, but still Diablo 3 was one hell of a good action RPG, right? I think that Blizzard were doing it right back then. There were actually a number of titles by Blizzard that got canned. There was StarCraft Terran Ghost. Wait, yes, I think that was it. Where it was supposed to be a mix of... Well, it's supposed to be mostly a stealth espionage-like game, like Metal Gear Solid. I don't know if you've ever played that.
A bit.
My God, I am so old, right? It doesn't help. So, it's got this stealth espionage element to it. Like, if you played anything like Thief, anything that you've got to stick to the shadows, you get the idea. But they also got heavily influenced by Battlefield 1942, right? Which came out during StarCraft Terran Ghost development. And this was for the PlayStation 2. So they turned around and said, let's try and implement that for the game. And then it became a giant mess. So after years of development, they turned around and they canned it, right? They just pushed it off into the bin and just said, enough's enough. This was a bad concept. We can't fix it. They also had the same with the game that was supposed to be between Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3. It was called Lord of the Clans, right? Warcraft, Lord of the Clans. Ultimately, it got turned into a book, really good book. But the game itself was a point-and-click adventure game. And it just looked out of place. Characters were just doing things. They were interacting with the world in such weird ways that, it didn't fit thematically with the game. It made it too much of a Looney Tunes cartoon, right? So again, like that game was 95% done, and they canned it again, right? Blizzard used to be the shining example of developers because whatever they produced was a gem. These days, not so much.
Well, I think that, again, that comes down to how easy is it to produce something original and beautiful that works. It's really hard. So the fact that they managed to do it very frequently in the past doesn't necessarily mean that they'll do that in the future. And maybe that was a really great exception at that time and was something which was unprecedented and might be unprecedented into the near future. I do think, though, that I'm not very familiar with development cycles. I've never made a game myself, so I do not know necessarily what goes on behind the scenes. However, I can speak for myself with my years of creating videos and creating content, is that publishers, I can imagine, play a part on the one hand when you're free to develop and you're free, you have this idea and you're working on it, and then they're like, hey, we need this to be out because we need to meet our profit margins and this thing needs to be released. That's something in which the creative talent can be hindered by the higher ups, in a sense. I don't necessarily think that is as much of a problem, in the sense of there is a requirement for that sort of tyranny, in a sense of that sort of like structure, to be like, at some point something needs to be out. We do, like, I do know various YouTube creators as well that will create something when it's out, but as a result, they end up stifling their growth, and it hurts them financially because people like to have things on a regular basis, and at some point you need to earn some money to have some mouths to feed. However, aside from the publisher like saying you need to release it now and therefore the game being all buggy and stuff, I think that on the other hand, when I started making videos and I was doing from that better projects, whenever I had an idea, I was very excited about the idea. And then I started making streams, or I started doing videos more frequently. And before that, and I would say like, oh my God, I got such a cool video coming up. Oh, there's something so cool coming up. I can't tell you anything, but oh, it's so cool. And actually, no, I'm just going to tell you, we're going to be doing this thing right here. And it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be out next week. And then the thing wouldn't be out for a month because I completely didn't realize that it took so much time to make. Or the thing was just much, much worse, and I had to like ditch it because it wasn't as fun as I thought it would be. And as a result, I've learned that even though I might feel excitement at the start of a project, it's wise for me not to talk about it until it's nearly done or nearly out, because people don't get upset about not getting the things that they don't know about. They will be happy about getting the things that they don't know about. They will also get happy of getting the things that they were anticipating, but they will be sad about the things that they were anticipating and they're not getting. So I think that you're better off announcing things and telling people about things once you're relatively certain that something comes out at a given time. And I think that that is the key problem when it comes to delays that go on forever and then end up in nothing, or delays that end up with a rushed product, or delays at all. That at the time of announcement, they weren't quite as sure that this thing would be completed at the time that they announced it would come out. And I think that that's the key problem here, where they weren't anticipating something to come out, and whether that came down to the corporate structure saying it needs to be out at this point and them not fully investigating as to whether it will be ready at that point, or excited people that are creating it and being like, oh, this will be so fun, before actually putting it through the test to see whether it actually works. Yeah, at that point, it doesn't really matter. It's a bit too early announced.
So there's to talk about like the whole development practices of developers. Talking from the point of view as one, there are a few different ways of dealing with an issue, right? So in this day and age, there's typically Agile and Scrum, right? So these are concepts of how to develop an application. Agile is, oh, well, when something breaks or whatever, the severity of the issue dictates the priority. So it may stop you from doing whatever you're doing to fix that, rather than continuing with the work you're doing, right? This is not typically how stuff is done when it's a product for the company itself, right? So I imagine things like Cyberpunk. So let me explain Scrum first, then I'll say which one I think is developed which way. With Scrum, the idea is that you have a list of tasks that need to be done. You sit down as a team and you decide how difficult each task will be, right? Typically using the Fibonacci sequence, but that's a maths thing. You describe how difficult a thing is going to be, and then you try and plan out the next week, 2 weeks, month, of tasks based on the amount of difficulty. So you might say, in a week, I can do 2 medium tasks and that's it. Or you could say I could do a hard task and an easy task. Or I can do 6 easy tasks if I've just done the maths in my head correctly. So, that is how you can work out how much you can do for easy tasks.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like
That's
that.
fine.
Four
Yeah.
easy tasks. But so it's stuff like that. But you work out what you can do, and then that is the plan. So if there are any errors, if there are any bugs, I very much imagine that those are addressed after what's called the sprint is concluded. So the week, the 2 weeks, the month, after that's concluded, you'll get a list of bugs back. You're like, right, okay, so I will address these bugs now based on the difficulty, so on and so forth. So a bug in Agile can be addressed immediately, but a bug in Scrum can't start until the sprint after it was discovered. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Basically, the one is like you drop what you're doing, you take on the new thing, and the other one is like, well, I'll put it at the bottom of my list once I'm done with the things that I need to get done.
Exactly. That is literally it. Now, with Cyberpunk 2077, I very much envision it is developed as a Scrum, right? With Anthem, I very much imagine it's developed Agile, right? So it is entirely dependent on the priority. So the priority is to make sure you don't miss that deadline, right? Whereas with Cyberpunk, it's, no, we could just move the deadline, right? Now, I'm very sure that the marketing team of CD Projekt Red do not like the idea of moving the release date, because if all the adverts, if all the billboards, if all the buses, if all the cinema screenings or whatever are advertising the release date to be April 2020, and then you've added on an additional 5 months? 5 months. It's a little bit like, oh shit, what are we going to do with all those adverts? Because it's now misinformation.
It's, I can imagine it being a huge decision that needs to be made. And I'm trying to figure out, it feels as though this has happened a lot with games. I'm not quite sure how much this has happened with movies, but I think it does tend to happen sometimes. Though I feel not as often when it comes to like the big titles. But it's part of the creative endeavor. It's like you don't know how long things are going to take. And even with the less creative endeavors, there will always be bumps on the road which you're not accounting for. However, it is a big decision that needs to be made before you decide to delay something. However, I think when it comes towards rushed games and when it comes towards delays, how do you stand towards that? Like, would you rather, if you were from the perspective of both the developer, like you were developing a game, or from the from the perspective of whether you're a developer and from the perspective of you as a personal gamer, how do you feel about having it to make a decision where a game either comes out as rushed and incomplete, but on the date itself, or gets pushed back and gets completed a couple months down the line? How do you feel about that?
So, from a developer's point of view, I have this all the time, right? This is the deadline. You can't miss the deadline. It's like, shit's happened. Something's gone horribly wrong. Completely out of my control. I didn't fucking do it. It could be like, a tree fell on the building, right? You need to get the thing out. A tree has hit the building. It's like, yeah, no, but you got to get the thing out. It's like, I don't care. There is a tree in the building, right? And I do get a lot of pressure from people who say, you need to get it out. And I can appreciate that they have to do their job. But at the same time, I would like some allowance. I have to be careful what I say here. But, there has to be some allowance in what is done. right? So if like, say for whatever reason, I got hit by a bus,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was in a horrible accident and I died, right? Then the person that would shout at me to get the thing done physically can't. I'm no
Mm-hmm.
longer available to do the thing. I am the only one that is in a position that can do the thing. No one else can do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, what is the opportunity, right? So, what are the options? And literally, the only option is you turn to the client and you say, "I'm sorry, we can't make that deadline." So, why give me the hassle for something that is completely unreasonable, like a tree is in the building,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you could turn to the to the client and say, "We've had a horrible accident. There is a tree in the building, right? It has, broken our server. It's broken our internet connection. It's broken all our computers, right? You know, the developer was stranded until we could get the tree out of the building,
Mm-hmm.
right? What that is a reasonable problem. You have something bad. You can't just expect to just, oh, I'm a genie, I've just fixed everything. So that's my point of view as a developer.
Mm-hmm.
Things should be flexible, right? As a gamer, I want a top quality product, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather the game be finished and it sat there in a back room for 3 months, maybe even 6 months, waiting to be released, but it is finished.
Mm-hmm.
No more work is going to be done on it. Maybe some patches, waiting for it to go out to all the little boys and girls to be installed on their computers, right? But there should not be any further work on the development,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I completely agree on the gamer side of things. That I wish that more games were developed in the sense of it's done maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, and then it will just maybe they start another project. Who knows? But then it's done and it will release at the time that it comes out. Because what I feel, and as you said, like I'm probably a little bit too young to have seen this with many different games. So I'm taking a lot of my experience from Warframe and some games like Cyberpunk right now, where I don't have a problem with that it's being delayed. However, if I look at Anthem, if I look at some of Warframe's releases, when they push out a rushed game, I think I'm trying to see what the benefit is. I think the benefit is that at least you have something out. And I do subscribe to the mindset of it's better there's something than that there's nothing. Especially when it comes to creating YouTube videos. Sometimes you need to get something out. And that it might not be something that you're entirely happy with. And if you watch those videos of mine, most of the time around the end, the editing will be a little bit less flamboyant because it needed to be out. However, I think that you need to cross the MVP line, which you always mention. Like, it needs to be a minimum viable product, and then, if it's not 100% but 95%, I'll be fine. I think, though, that when it comes to shipping a rush product which doesn't meet that line, it really hurts deep, I think, in your reputation. Because I've felt it with Anthem when it came out. Anthem coming out and just being almost nothing but a shell of what it was supposed to be felt like a very big bait and switch. And I think actually I think that's the core. I think that's the core of it. When a game comes out and it's fully developed, or something is fully released as it's supposed to be, you feel like it's a trustworthy transaction. However, when you get something which is fully incomplete, it starts to affect your trust in the company. It feels like a bait and switch. And as a result, I haven't really gone back to Anthem. I'm considering maybe doing a video back on it, like being like, oh yeah, let's take a look a year after launch. But it just felt like a complete sham. It was like, well, here's the thing, it doesn't really work. And at the same time, I think that I've also been having that with Warframe, where I've been seeing that game promise a lot and a lot of things, and every time it was being delayed. However, what it did with those delays is follow it up. Every time that they did it, they did a big patch, they followed it up with actually giving you what they promised. And this time, they come around, and the last few updates, they've skipped the introduction bits. They're not even introducing the things anymore. And the final big update of the year is a completely unfinished thing, which doesn't even feature the things that they promised the gamers like 2 years ago.
2 years, yeah.
And at that
a year and a half.
a year and a half ago. And at that point, it really breaks the trust in the sense of, okay, this is what you showed me a year and a half ago. It is not finished yet. It is not in a state where I can enjoy it all of the time without experiencing some very big interruptions and missing very core elements which you promised me. And now you're still holding these new things above my hat, but what am I to trust you for bringing me these as you promised me? So I think that I would almost never decide to go for a rushed game. I don't think there's any point in time in which I preferred a rushed product to be released.
I agree. I think that you can get a spectacular product in many different shapes and sizes. Like, I love Dead Cells, right? I think Dead Cells is an amazing game, and I go back to it frequently. I'm actually going to bring up my Steam muckjiggers to find out I've only played 48 hours of Dead Cells. I swear I've played so much. It feels like... No, because I had a bloody week where I was offline, so it didn't register any of that. Yeah, no, I played a lot more Dead Cells than just that. But, what else have I got? Nier Automata, I don't know how many hours I've put into that. Let's just take that checkbox off. Nier Automata, I have played 45 hours. The game's plot is 30 hours long, so I've added another 15 hours on top of that. Starbound, 99 hours, not, massive into that. But the big one is Warframe, which according to Steam, which is wrong, is 4,353 hours. I've probably played like half of that. So, there is a lot of value in a game that is constructed well, right? Not every game is a masterpiece, but there are plenty of games that are... Sorry, I just got an important message I had to reply to.
Okay, well...
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so, off the top of your head, don't look this up. Are there any games which you remember being rushed out of release, being rushed out into a very bad, pitiful state?
Apart from Anthem?
Well, yeah, Anthem, of course. Any more?
This is... Oh! I'm going to say Crisis 3. I love the Crisis franchise. I really do. But 3 was about 6 hours long because they wanted to release it, I think it was a year or two after the second one. The second one was the bomb, right? I absolutely love... The second one is that they hit it right. Yeah, they dumbed it down a bit because they wanted to get it out for consoles, and I can acknowledge that. They put it in a city, which was gorgeous. Yeah, 2 was amazing. 3, they really let's up the graphics. Cool. Runs like shit. Oh, let's put it on Origin. That's a bad idea. And then, so Crisis 3 was a rush job. I still enjoyed it, but looking back, it was not worth the money.
So, you already talked about the games that were delayed and then ended up being in a bad shape. Are there any games which you can think of the top of your head which were delayed but turned out to be masterpieces? So, taking that,
I want to say StarCraft, but I don't think it was delayed, so to speak. What was?
Given that it's so hard to remember, these sort of games that are delayed and then turn out to be great. Do you think that you would agree with the statement that I've been seeing around my Twitter feed a lot, where it says a delayed game that turns out to be good will be remembered for how great it was. A rushed game will be forever bad.
To actually, I have a game now, Half-Life 2.
Okay.
So I think the difficulty is, as you said, it's a great game will be remembered for how great it is, not for the fact that it was delayed.
Yeah.
So, like, I didn't remember it was delayed, but yes, you get Half-Life. What about you? Like, can you think of any games that you thought was not worth the quick rush development period? And that's the first part of the question.
Yeah, so I would say Anthem. Very, very much Anthem. It's
but you can't say Anthem. If I couldn't say Anthem, you can't say Anthem.
Aside from that, I think, well, it's also being said in chat, but I was thinking about before it was being posted. Good job checking that now, but no, I was actually thinking, even though I enjoyed this game, Mass Effect Andromeda, was a game which was supposed to be like the new entry into the new Mass Effect franchise, and then turned out to be buggy as all hell, and not really in a flattering way. However, I really enjoyed it because it was my very first time playing a Mass Effect game. However, I do remember that very quickly it just lost all interest from everyone. Like, I remember playing it with a bunch of friends, and like a month later, no one talks about it anymore. I did finish the entire campaign, which was fun. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I would say Mass Effect Andromeda, which is one that comes to mind, which was kind of finished in a rush state. Aside from that, I don't remember that many rushed games. I would say I don't even remember many games that were necessarily delayed, because even if they were delayed, I only remember the games which I really thoroughly enjoyed, and then I don't care whenever they were released.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that whenever I've experienced a rushed game, like, as it's been pointed out in chat, Mass Effect Andromeda, I completely went out of my head. Mm-hmm. Like, I have this tendency, like, if I have ever watched a movie or played a game I do not like, I kind of promptly forget about that game. The only thing I can assume is it's a bad thing because I can't remember anything of it. It's like, I'm going through my recycling bin. Oh, no, that's useless. Right, empty out the recycling bin. I now have more memory to remember things. And it's like, the only things I distinctly remember are the utterly garbage things, right? Like those few scenes from the movie Sunshine, right? They really stuck. I cannot remember the rest of the movie, but those scenes really stuck with me because of how stupid they were. But like, the recent Lara Croft Tomb Raider movie that came out, I barely remember it because I just didn't enjoy any of it. So typically when I don't enjoy a game, I just forget about it.
Yeah, me too. So in that case, I would say that when it comes to making the decision of delaying or releasing a game, I would say, well, preferably you not have it get to that point. I think that the bigger problem at this point in time resides with early announcements, even though I wouldn't necessarily say that at this point in time is an accurate statement, because as I've heard from you, it has been going on for years. People have been announcing shit way too early for years, and still people are falling into the trap of doing it again and again. Only announce it when you're certain you'll be done with it at that point in time. However, I think that, yes, the underlying problem is that things are being announced too early, or the expected planning wasn't as accurate as they intended it to be, which could be because of inaccurate planning, which could be also because of very accurate planning, but a tree fell for the building. Like, I mean, you're not planning for the tree falling for the building, so what the hell are you going to do at that point?
Yeah.
However, I think that when faced with a choice of having to either delay it or rush it out, I think that I cannot find a single good reason to rush it out the door, except for when the survival of the company depends on it. Let's say that you only have enough money to keep your office running for like a month at most. And this is the very first game that you're releasing, and your investor money is running out, so you have to put something out so people buy it, and then you can invest it right back into it. Then I don't think you have any other choice. Otherwise, I don't know. Could there be a good reason for rushing something out?
I don't think there's ever a good reason to rush something out unless it is to carry on the hype of what the original had succeeded in doing, and thus you get more money. Right? Does that make sense? So I can see it entirely from a sort of marketing publisher point of view, but I can't see a reason to do it from a dev point of view.
Well,
Right?
like one thing which I think is important to keep in mind is when you were talking about the story that a tree falls through the building, and you still need to get it done. It's if you are working as a developer on a payroll for a company, it's whether you get it done this week or whether you get it done next week, you're still being paid for the days that you work. I'm not going to talk about overtime because I don't know how that works for everyone, but most of the time you are paid for the regular days that you work. However,
typically overtime is not a thing because it's such a high paying job. It's typically salary based, so it's get the work done, don't get fired.
Yeah, so you have an active salary that's coming in at a reliable pace.
Yeah.
However, if I were to take this from an indie point of view, like I am an independent YouTube producer, film producer, streamer, if I don't make a video, if I don't stream, I don't get paid. So I can imagine if I work by myself and I have a task to complete a video by a date and there's, let's say, a sponsorship deal to that, if I miss that date, I will not get paid. So if a tree falls through my house and I say, oh no, I can't deal with this, well, if I say that, I will not get paid. So I better work my ass off to get it done because then I end up getting paid and I can fix my house. And otherwise, I'm sitting with a broken house and no money. So I can imagine it from a independent creator or independent perspective that you need to get something done at certain points. And as you grow your company, I don't know how many companies work, what their profit margins are, but I can imagine that when I am responsible for giving people a solid salary regardless of the circumstances of how things go. So like let's say I would hire you as an editor. We were first roles, you become the editor now. And I were to say, okay, I'm going to pay you a salary because that gives you some comfort and some ease of mind that you'll get this amount of money every month. You don't have to worry about it. However, at that point, my income still relies on my channel making money whenever I release something. And if I don't release something, the same goes the same time, I will not make money. So that I now don't only have to worry about me making money, but I also have to worry about paying your salary. And I think that at certain points, I don't know how large the development teams are. I think at a certain points, those times, even though it might seem that the publisher says, like, it needs to be done now, you small developer, you with your stupid creative ideas, it needs to be done because I want money and I want to buy 5 Lamborghinis. It might also be that they're like, we're literally running out of money. And if we want to continue to pay you, this needs to be out. It needs to be out now. We cannot afford it. So I think that that's also something that needs to be kept in mind.
I can't imagine a publisher ever running out of money. Like oh god, I think it was a Jim Sterling video, or maybe it was someone else. The whole point of or maybe it was even me, I can't remember. The whole point of a publisher was to be a source of knowledge to help the production of the devs to make the good product, and as a result, get the good product out of the door. The publisher pockets the the earnings from the game itself,
Mhm.
but the publisher paid for the devs to complete their product, right? But that's completely changed to what it's used to be, right? So it's just a case of like, I need to get my quarterly profits up higher enough. We're going to release your game now. We don't have a game. Oh, but we're releasing it. It's like, but it's not finished. Like, do you remember? Oh, actually, I think of another game that I think got delayed for its release was the Metal Gear Rising Revengeance game, I think, which was done in conjunction between Hideo Kojima's company. I swear that the company has changed names so many times. And Platinum Star, the company that did Nier Automata and Astral Chain, because Hideo Kojima's company were struggling so horrifically trying to work out a way to do this free slicing of enemies. And basically Platinum had a way of doing it. So they joined forces to get the game out the door. Right? So again, that's another solution, so to speak. And like, I think this was, it was still Konami. But,
Oh, great.
it's, yeah.
Konami.
Yeah. Konami.
Oh, man.
But it is... I don't think there is any problem with delaying the release of a game as long as it doesn't keep getting delayed, right? I'm impressed with what we have seen for Cyberpunk 2077. I couldn't even fathom the sort of game that they were going to produce. So seeing what they have done, it looks mint, right? It looks absolutely phenomenal, right? I am looking for hell. It is one of the reasons why I'm upgrading my PC. One of the reasons why I upgraded my PC the last time was because of Crysis, right? I bought a new PC back in something time just to play the first Crysis game, right? This time I'm upgrading my PC so I can play Cyberpunk 2077 at stupid detail, also to help with the video rendering. But that's just an afterthought, right?
Who cares about videos? Who cares about our content? We care about
what are we,
Cyberpunk.
content creators?
No. No, we're just people that complain about games and then hope that developers listen to us.
So I have a question for you, which we haven't touched upon yet, but I think is kind of important. And I wrote down my question. So Activision and EA are known for their yearly releases for games like Call of Duty and FIFA, respectively. Right? Do you think that the expectations of yearly releases set a precedent for frequent updates and /or releases that could be to the detriment of any game, regardless of its development, like Cyberpunk 2077? Or, sorry, Cyberpunk 2077, a complete product, or Warframe, a constantly evolving experience. So we're not saying, right, are the games themselves bad? Are we saying, or the fact that they're getting released frequently or infrequently or whatever, we are saying, so we're asking, are games that do come out on the regular causing an expectation, a demand, right, for regular releases of games /updates?
I think that is a very interesting way of looking at it. I haven't looked at it at that point yet. But if I were to attempt to look at it, I think that's something which would be very closely resembling to that situation where, because there are some franchises or competitors which are releasing at a very frequent rate, where once a year is very frequent for a game to be released, other games which would otherwise maybe need to take longer are being pushed or expected by the fan base to update at that same schedule because look at this game, it's doing it once a year. I think that we were seeing that thing also play out in the YouTube sphere where You see where daily uploads have become a very well-known way of growing your channel fast, even though we don't know how well that works. However, at the height of the days of the growth of the main gaming channels on YouTube, we saw PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye uploading once or even twice a day. Whereas if you've tried to make videos on your own, or if you've been part of a large video project, rarely does anything get produced once a day, especially if you're trying really hard to make something really good looking. Like the Hollywood movies you see, like they'd be lucky if they can get 10 minutes done in a day of part of that movie. It takes a long time to make something good. However, because there are other players in the game the game industry, or in this case, the YouTube video industry, that are releasing at a high frequency, they also reap the benefits of the higher frequency, of having the familiarity, of having the hype of a new thing coming out, and having the repeatedness of, oh, here it is again, like the mind space. The more you come out, the more you interact with people because something comes out, the more you're in their minds, and the more recognized you may be, and at that point, maybe you can sacrifice some quality. Now, does that impact the games that are competing with it? I would say yes, because I think that anything that happens within the space impacts what happens in that space. If FIFA or Call of Duty weren't to be there, the gaming environment would look very different. How much does it affect them in the sense of gamers pressuring them to release content? I think that depends. I think that if you have a well-established developer, well-established legacy in your franchise content, then you may be able to get by it. I really like the bold statement of Cyberpunk when they came out with their very first teaser, where they said, this will come out when it's finished. This will come out when it's done. That's a really bold statement, but that's really, really admirable. Not every game developer can do that. That being said, so I think that the higher up, more well-established game developers can do that easily. They aren't necessarily feeling the pressure so much. I think that's more towards the mid-level, the mid-tier developers. They might be feeling more of that pressure. Then again, is that pressure justified? I do not know how long it takes to develop a game. I think that in general game development, when it comes to a one-off game or a brand new entry, it may be a little bit really harsh on them to expect them to finish it in a year. I also feel that when it comes to a brand new game which starts and finishes, like if you play through it, I don't necessarily feel that a long wait is necessarily something to complain about, because in the meantime you can go and do other things, and it feels more like you have to wait for your dinner to be served, but it will be served eventually. I think that when it comes to live service games like Warframe, I don't know how much impact it has, but I do think that we are starting to see that a yearly update schedule is something which seems to be very required of these games to keep their audience around. Because
can I jump in?
Yeah.
So one of the things that you really highlighted was the whole, use the analogy of, waiting for your food to come out. But at some point, there is I don't care if the food shoots rainbows out of my butt, right? Give me my damn food. I am hungry, right? And obviously, there is a sour result if the food is not good or even okay. So I can appreciate it that sometimes you just need to feed your customer, right? I've had plenty of experiences where I've been left waiting. I've been waiting at a restaurant for an hour and a half for my food to finally come. I've complained multiple times, where the hell is my food? And I'm in a party of people, so we can't just up and leave, right? And then when it eventually turns up, it's not cooked. It's undercooked, right? I don't want to name any companies. And ultimately, some of us ended up being sick. So, what did we wait for? Yeah. If I had gone to Nando's, right,
Mm-hmm.
and they turned to me and said, I've been waiting for an hour, and they turned to me and said, it's gonna be another half an hour
Mm-hmm.
to get what you call it, your Nando's, or give us 2 seconds, like literal 2 seconds, and we'll give you a KFC instead,
Mm-hmm.
right? I go, fucking give me the KFC.
I do think that there's a difference between what you're describing and the way that I at least view games that are being released. Because I think at the point that you're sitting in the restaurant, you've most likely already paid. So you're already very much invested into this thing where if you bail out, you will lose something. And not just time, you will lose your investment into it, like sitting down and paying up for the drinks or whatever, or paying up already for your order. I think that when it comes to pre orders, that is where that's where you will be when the game gets delayed. You will be there. I've already paid for this. When is my meal being served? And I think at that point you're right to be a little bit upset.
Yeah.
However, I think that when it comes to something like Cyberpunk, which I intend to buy when it comes out, because I mean, with the digital sales, you don't have to worry about missing out your copy on the launch day. I'm really looking forward to this meal. But as long as I see that it's not ready, I'll just go and eat at these other restaurants because there's so many restaurants which I haven't tried yet.
No, I agree. I think part of the problem is with so the continuation of my analogy. Even if Nando's
Mm-hmm.
were to turn around and say, like, here's your KFC, I'd still bitch. I'd still say, what I fucking paid for. It was awful.
Yeah, but
I got
that's
fed. Yeah, and
mhm.
you
Yeah.
can say the same thing about Railjack,
Well,
right?
see,
So
the thing is that I feel that live service games are in a different league, and I think that this is a very interesting topic to break open because I think that there's so much which we don't know yet, and so much which hasn't even been looked into yet because it is such a new form of media, in how long it's being continued, and like the main difference between a regular franchise game and a live service game is that where if a regular game gets delayed, I need to wait longer until I can get that particular piece of food. So as long as I haven't pre-ordered it, I can go ahead and try new things, or I can re-eat other meals, which I mean I have already eaten before, but hey, maybe I like them a lot. However, a live service game is intent on keeping you eating. So it's more like you've already begun your meal. You're in the middle of like the main course, and they're announcing that you're getting a new course. The like the next course comes around, or maybe dessert comes around. They're like, "We're coming with this," and it looks really good. And either you invested it with a pre-order, or maybe it's free. It's just part of the meal, so like you're still invested in it coming around. And it's like it's being dangled in front of you while they're encouraging you to keep on eating because that's the way that their model is set up. So it is not necessarily that you're eating that you finish your previous meal and you're waiting for a new meal. You're still stuck in the middle of the meal. Now, a very good criticism, which I can very much appreciate, is to say you can play something else. You can go and put it down. You can go like put down your knife and fork. You can be like, all right, I'll be back when you serve me the dessert. I'll go and grab some KFC right now. However, the thing with live service games is that they're very much designed to keep you coming back. And the psychological tricks that play a part in that, they're made to work on people. And that's not that you can completely blame the game, but it also means that the fact that that you feel like you can have to continue to play, I mean, it makes sense because that's what the game is designed to do. So, in that case, delays can hurt more, in my opinion, than when it comes to the delay of a game which is yet to be released.
no, I can concur with that. So yeah, I think that we're now talking about Railjack for Warframe. I think that yeah, okay, it wasn't a complete product. We had something to do over the
Mm-hmm.
holidays. You didn't have to do it all the time. You didn't have to burn through the content immediately. there's still plenty of people that I know that have got like maybe one weapon from the Kuvaliches and then have just stopped entirely. Not to throw any shade your direction. Out of interest, have you done any more Kuvaliches since your first one?
I've captured another one, and then I've captured another one, and I've killed another one, and then I was like, yeah, this is sort of tasted fine.
Yeah,
I've done all again. Yeah, I'm happy.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's interesting though, because like I'm struggling to find any other players to play with to do Kuvaliches. There it needs to have more expansion on matchmaking because it's just too difficult right now. And I feel that with yeah, you're right. With like games as a service compared to complete products, it is more of a detriment if there is a delay. Right.
And I think what plays a part in it, and this is something which we talked about last week, but I think we have only touched the surface, if even that, on what this entire topic means. But I think that it's a very delicate situation where I can very much understand that in order to remain relevant, you need to publish the bigger and bigger and bigger and better and better and better things at a frequent rate. And I think that what you were asking me about, whether these games, like these yearly games, play onto other games and having our audiences expect to have something be out yearly, might play a part in this, but it also might be that after a year, people need to move on. People want something new. And because these games are sort of designed to keep you playing, it's way different because like you're kind of being like suggested to keep on doing this thing, even though it's very similar and nothing really changed. So you want something to happen. So maybe that makes sense.
It is interesting though, because I feel that I'm not going to talk about FIFA, but Call of Duty certainly. I remember a few months ago when the reboot Call of Duty was due to come out. Several of my work colleagues got super hyped. They're like, "Oh yeah, the new Call of Duty's coming!" Like I remember one of them constantly calling his girlfriend to try and get a copy from various different retail outlets across the city he was currently working in, but he couldn't leave the office because he had a day job. Right? And he's like, "Oh no, go try here, go try there, go try here, go try there." It's like he reserved a copy in a store and he got her to go pick it up. She needed ID, so they wouldn't give it to her because he reserved it under his name, blah 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 blah. But the hilarious thing is, right, 180 gig to install that game. It won't fit on most SSDs.
Damn.
But it was like 2 days after its release. None of my colleagues were talking about it. They all just like, it's all right.
Honestly, I wasn't expecting much from it because it was just a reboot of something that recently come out, in the sense of like, well, it was 10 years ago, but still, it felt rather recent. Like Modern Warfare 2 still feel rather recent to me. And I was like, well, if I wanted to play that, I can just throw in like Modern Warfare. I wasn't really interested in it. However, I think that when it comes to the Call of Duty franchise, I haven't been keeping up with FIFA, but I have kept up with Call of Duty for a little bit, mostly accidental. However, when it came to Modern Warfare that came out, and then we had more Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare 3, I think those games got continuously better and better and better. And I think, to me, those really belong to like the time where I was enjoying these games to the fullest, and they were good. After that, the titles that came after that, I think, with the exception of World War II, which is kind of them going back to the basics again, they didn't feel that much better. They just, I was like, no, not really. That might be my age, but at the same time, I think it also comes down to this spark of creativity and like having something be successful. which is really hard to make happen. I think FIFA is like the sports games are like kind of hard to get wrong because they're not really innovating that much. That some things get better, but it's like, haha, it's just another year and things look slightly better. But yeah, what do you expect? You don't expect that much more. So I feel that this, like, honestly, if I look at Call of Duty, the things that make me dislike it a little bit more were like all the things that they were doing with it, in the sense of, I was like, this is just, I really enjoy this as my simple shooter. And then there was like customization of your character and like the double jump. And like, I was like, this feels like I'm playing in a hack lobby. I just want to play Call of Duty. But yeah, it's a tough thing. And I think that when it comes to the live service market, the idea that they're like, we want to keep you playing and stick around for the next big thing, which is their philosophy, which is being brought to you. The next big thing needs to be bigger and better, and it needs to be good. And the moment that it's not bigger and better, or it's not good, then things start to be pulled into question. And I think that one of the shiny examples when it comes to Railjack, and there was also being asked what are your biggest disappointments with Railjack, is my biggest disappointment with the update which Warframe put through, which was their update of 2019, is that it sets a bad precedent. If you looked at 2018 TennoCon where they announced Railjack, actually no, let's bring it back to 2017 TennoCon where they announced for Planes of Eidolon and Sacrifice two big updates, and then they barely got the second update out in time before the next announcement convention. And I was like, okay, you barely made it, but they promised this time that they would not focus so much on having a working promo. They would focus more on like getting something out. And then it was Fortuna, Railjack, and New War. And then only Fortuna came out. And it was like, okay, but you announced two things, but maybe you got it wrong. Fine, I can understand that. Well, then we're going to go on with these two things. And then they added on like Planes of Jafiri to be announced. And it's like, okay. Well, I understand that you want to announce something new, because otherwise it's just repetitions. However, then what you release needs to be good. And what we saw with Railjack, even though it had a really long development time, it showed that it wasn't good. And one of the reasons why I feel they're not going back so much to rework a lot of things or come back to a lot of things is because this system is built on having a next big thing come out to keep people playing, because the idea is to keep people playing. And like, it will be bad for a live service game to say to people, hey, we're going to fix some things. We're going to delay the next update by a year. So, hey, we'll see you guys in a year. That'd be bad. They can't do that. However, right now, if they want to continue on, as we've seen them do over the last years, with continuing to announce bigger and better things, then what we're faced up with right now is either they're going to spend a lot of time on Railjack to fix it, which I really hope they do, but then what are they going to announce on TennoCon, and all the things that they were already going to do, how are they going to do that if already Railjack came out in this state? And if they're not going to fix Railjack, then what kind of guarantee does it give us that anything that they'll announce will even look remotely as good as when they announced it, or like even less have a chance to be better? And then it's like, if you can't trust what's being announced, then yeah, like, what do you even care at that point? And that's something that hurt me really bad, in the sense of, yeah.
No, I agree. It's difficult. I think that, okay, so when I was doing the last Arbiters, which will actually be going out tomorrow, I was asked the question, would I rather DE to scrap Kuva Liches and Railjack, take them out of the game, continue to work them, and then eventually re-release them later on down the line, or leave them as is and then release the Plains of Deviri? My response was, I would rather them scrap the stuff out of the game that is broken, rework them, then bring them back. Don't move on to the next thing. Don't, it is too damning to have shit left within your game. A very interesting point is, in some instances, we have games that, though they do not appear to be rushed, though they look like a complete product, the truth of the matter is that they're not, right? Railjack certainly does not look like a complete product, right?
No.
But that's not where I wanted to take that. One of my favorite game franchises is the Legacy of Kain games, right? The very first Soul Reaver game is actually half the intended length, right? Where the game stops, they intended it to be, again, twice as long, right? But they were running out of time. A release date was announced, and they had to change it. They had to crop off the game in half, right? To end it, and then the sequel had nothing to do what was originally intended for the first one, right? They changed the plot massively. I love it.
Yeah,
Right?
honestly,
yeah.
I can really respect that. I think that that's a really good thing to do because, as I said, people don't know. People won't be sad about the thing that they missed if they don't know that it was that was going to be there. I think that what worries me with Warframe, what's going to be very important for me when it comes to how I continue to see this game, is how they continue to move on from here. Because I think that a lot of things end up biting them back in when things that they overlooked. So what you say is, I'd rather have that they take out the half-finished systems and finish them up properly before moving on, which is something which they haven't done in most of the time. We've seen that with things, well, we have an entire Conclave mode which is barely being touched, but at the same time, Arcwing is one of the systems which has never properly found its function, but as a result has haunted the game with every single big update that it's had ever since. And that's insanity. Like, seriously, instead of devoting like a half a year to finishing it off properly to something structurally integral and fun to play, they've always hold it around through the cinematic quest, through the open worlds, and now through to Railjack to fix it up, and it just botches things up. It has, in the open worlds, it has caused a problem with traveling and blinks and speeding around and K-drives, and that it made no sense. Like right now, it's not in a good place where it's there at the moment, and they can't really take it out. And at the same time, Railjack, we just see it die all the time, but at the same time, it's more powerful than the Railjack's gun when you begin with it. It makes no sense. And I think that when we're looking at Kuvaliches, again, which I think originally was intended to be a part of the Railjack update, but then was released earlier because, well, we know that Railjack wasn't ready. So obviously, I think that they felt like something needed to come out. So here we go, we have the Kuvaliches. Which, again, is something I can see that decision, but at the same time, it bites you back because that takes away from the Railjack content update, and now you have two unfinished systems. And I think, for me, what is really important is if they move on, like they've done before, where they will maybe patch it up a little bit, but just leave it hanging as it is, which they've done with most other things, and then move on to do the new war, and then announce 2-3 new things on TennoCon. Then we're just building up a list of things that they're announcing, which we don't know whether they're going to be released in any way, shape, or form in the way that they're being announced. And if they're going to be released and broken, then we'll just be adding on like broken patches to the game, and then it like, what are you even around for? Because I think that at that point, it's just madness. It's just announcing things that aren't there to release things which are just a shadow of what they imagined it to be, to then just be left in the game unattended for. And at that point, are you even playing a game? And I think that those are some very important things when it comes to the live service games, especially Warframe at this time. But at the same time, Anthem was also hyped up to be something very good, and then it turned out to be a shell of itself. And instead of fixing things solidly one by one, they had this roadmap, which turned out to be not the thing, and it's still, as far as I've heard it, and I haven't played it in a long time. Maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I've heard, it's still not there. And it's like, well, you don't need to be exactly what you announced if it's so bad, but fix things one by one, and don't try to like go insane and hype something up again. No, fix it, work on it, bit by bit, make it better. And I think that, yeah, I mean, live service games are an entirely different beast on its own. And I think, whew, that is interesting.
It's interesting how you, how your point of view of Railjack and Warframe's development actually heavily reflects my point of view of Blizzard Entertainment, right? I used to hold Blizzard in such high regard. I thought that they were amazing. They were incredible as a developer. They produced games that were of such high quality. You know, they actually have a statue in their courtyard, and on the floor there is the statement, gameplay first. Right? They after the whole China thing. But I absolutely love them. But then came the creeping years of Blizzard. What the fuck are you even doing? Right? The plot of World of Warcraft makes fuck all sense. Right? It's a mess. You know, and like the amount of things that have happened in one expansion is just off the rails. Like, I'm not surprised it wasn't directed by Michael Bay, right? You then have their esports push of Heroes of the Storm, right? You know, they're massively pushing it. They even did this new booster thing, this yearly booster that, you know, you buy it, and then depending on the number of people that you play with that also have a booster, they improve your performance, right? But 2, maybe 3 months after they released this booster, they turned around and said, we're stopping the push of the esports thing. And it's like, what the fuck, right? For years, they had released 12 to 18 heroes a year. Last year, they released, I think, 6, which was pathetic, right? Then, Hearthstone. Hearthstone is just a money pit. I mean, no offense to anyone that likes things like Magic the Gathering, but trading card games are just money pits that you just, oh, look, I'm just pouring my money down the drain. And Overwatch is like the Overwatch 2. Anyway, so Blizzard went from one of the most respected developers, in my point of view, down to one of the worst respected developers. You know, and you know, I don't think Blizzard could do anything right now for me, personally.
Well, like, I'm always wondering, like, what is, like, the counter argument to what you're saying? Like, is there, like, there must be reason behind why they did what they did. And there must be someone that thought that what they did was a good idea. And whenever it comes down to decisions being made, I think that when it came to Warframe, like, the biggest thing that people were always complaining about was, oh, it's so aimed at new players, it's made so easy and stuff like that. And honestly, as much as I was a big proponent for more difficulty in my game, I could very well understand that in order to keep a game relevant, in order to have people jump in on something which they wanted to do, it was a good thing to have something come out at an accessible level. So I could respect that decision. I just don't see any rhyme or reason when it comes to Railjack as it is right now. It's like, or like the general updates recently, it's like, yeah, if you can enjoy it, more power to you. And I'm not saying that you should feel bad if you enjoy it or I condemn you if you enjoy it. It's like, yeah, there is enjoyment to be found within a not completed product. If it works, it works. However, I do not see, apart from it being out, there being any good thing towards the way that it was released. It's out. Every single mission is the exact same mission, and it's buggy as hell. I don't see, except for it being released in 2019, there being any other good point in the way that the amount of time it took, the way that it was released, the thing that we have. And then when I hear about, like, when I hear you talk about Blizzard, I'm like, well, maybe I'm too stubborn. Maybe I can't step out of my point of view, but I don't know the intrinsics about the Blizzard situation. I think that as much as, like, I haven't been very well known with Blizzard's IPs, and right now I'm not having any interest in investing myself in them because, yeah, I mean, Blizzard, oh god. But that being said, like, Overwatch 2, maybe, if it is a PvE type of game.
Nope.
It's not? It's just going to be the same thing?
It's a clone of the first one.
So, yeah, I mean, could it be compared, in a sense, to like a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, in the sense where it was kind of the same game, but it releases again, so they expect everyone to move over, except for Overwatch released a couple of years ago, Call of Duty released every year. Could it be compared to that?
Quite possibly. It really depends on the long haul of what Activision are really trying to pull. I think so. I think the big thing is a dynamic changed at Blizzard, right? A dynamic changed in which the money holders basically said, look, you've now got to start developing like this. We need to be in competition with EA. We don't care if the product's incomplete. You're going to release the product, right? We don't care if there is a minority of people that are still playing the game. We're scrapping the game, right? I swear the only reason why World of Warcraft is still getting a look in is because, you know, it's probably making 2 times the amount it costs to produce it. Right, maybe even 3 times. We don't know because they are no longer releasing the numbers of how much money the Blizzard IPs are earning. Right, Activision stopped that a while ago because people were comparing them. The money Blizzard was making was shockingly so much more than what Activision was making per year. But Activision were fudging the numbers in the yearly reports. Right. Yeah.
I think that when it comes to Warcraft, World of Warcraft, I think that we're seeing the same thing which you saw with newspapers back in the day and moving towards like the old age, and now we're seeing it scramble away again. But what they had when newspapers first came out is they had a lot of like yellow journalism. They had like this throwing clickbait terms around before clickbait even was like a term. They were trying to like you had the person shouting out, being like, something happened, and then the thing didn't happen, but they wanted to sell the newspaper. However, that thing changed when subscriptions came around, and I think that having a subscription on your game in order to play it is it's a nice safety net in order to give you a continued financial, not investment, but continued financial support. And at that point, you don't necessarily have to worry about a new expansion because you're being paid all the time. However, when it comes to the release of a new game, when it comes to like the online support of like a brand new game and like microtransactions, it's like microtransactions and a new game are only supporting the developer financially when people are either buying the game, which they only do once, or when they are playing said game and buying those microtransactions. And at that point, people will always decline. The interest will always wane until like something new comes out. So the game developers are always much more enticed at that point because they will only get money if people click or people at that point people buy or play for microtransactions. So if an Overwatch 2 comes out, I can imagine that the Overwatch player numbers will go up massively in Overwatch 2 and they'll get a lot of money. So I can see that, and I think that a subscription service at that point is a really nice thing for World of Warcraft.
Yeah, no. So to bring this back to the original topic of, is it a bad thing if games get delayed in terms of production, in terms of release? Personally, I think this is too much of a personal thing. I personally think it is fine because I would rather a complete product. Maybe it's me in my older age. I've had too many shit things to rush. I would much rather wait and get the experience as intended, right? Than, get a really bad NAF experience and just feel bitter and twisted. I bought this. This is awful.
No, I think when it comes to the delay of a game like Cyberpunk, when it comes to this time, the delay of Cyberpunk, I don't mind. I think the meal comparison was really great in the sense of if you are not pre-invested in it when it comes to time or an insane amount of mind space investment, just find another meal in the meantime because there are things that you enjoy momentarily. You eat it and you go through it and you finish it up, which you will also do with Cyberpunk, which I'm really eager. I'm really looking forward to it, but I'd rather have it be a good, well-cooked meal than something that is half-cooked. So I'm really a big proponent of delays. Not that I want them for every game, but if they need to be made or it needs to be rushed, I'd rather have it be delayed. I think that when it comes to delays on live service games, I think that there is a lot more to live service games than I initially thought. I think that there's a lot more depth to it because it's so much more different in the way that it's structured and the way that it is maintained, other than like a regular franchise game or a standalone game. That some things go deeper than you'd expect. So overall conclusion, I think that I'm alright with the delay.
A part of me feels that there should be something in place. Maybe it's a contractual agreement or something that every contractor or something has to abide by, that there has to be a minimum amount of time spent in the production of a product before it can be considered completed. Otherwise, the publisher is in breach, if that makes sense. But at the same time, then other developers just won't have that clause in the contract, because I don't think it's fair for a company that's trying to develop Anthem, right? So then all of a sudden, we're releasing Anthem now. And I was like, but it's nowhere near ready. Yeah, but tough shit. We signed your paycheck. We're releasing it now. But it's going to completely destroy our image. Don't care. We want, I'm wondering if there should be something in place that protects the developer to make sure that the product they want to make is the best product they could make.
Yeah. Well,
I want to highlight, right? I am not a fan of Doom 2016, right? I dislike its what's the gauntlet style of, you go into a room, the door locks behind you, all the doors in the room are locked, there's monsters in the room, you kill all the monsters, then the doors unlock. I dislike that a lot. It's really against the original nature of the original Doom games, right? You could run around like a lunatic with monsters chasing after. That was one of the options. But, with this one, it's very much go into box, kill things, go into next box, right? Kill things, go into next box, kill things. And to me, it's just artificially lengthening a game that is just plain not enjoyable. And we've seen all these trailers and things. I watched a 11-minute video by the Russian Badger, who I really enjoy on YouTube, promote Doom Eternal, which is due to come out in a couple of months, right? But the thing that irked me was still you didn't get a good sense of how the game was paced, right? Because you got like maybe 5 to 10 seconds a clip, followed by another 5 to 10 seconds, followed by another 5 to 10 seconds, followed by another 5. Like, just show me from the moment you start a level. It doesn't have to be the first level. Show me the start up until you stop, because that is what I'm interested in. Am I still going to go through the whole gauntlet situation, which I hate? It is dull. It is boring. It is, and which I want to invest in it. It looks pretty. It looks interesting. But the marketing does not answer any of the questions I have, right, about the enjoyment of the experience. And that's the only reason why I won't pre-order it. I'm waiting for people to play it on Twitch so I can have a look at it to decide whether or not I'm going to invest. I did the same thing with Remnant, the Rise from the Ashes, and I'm glad I did, because I finally watched it. I was like, I like the look of this. I'm going to buy it.
No, I think that's a really good thing to do, in the sense of, I am, especially after we talked about it like in the early FrameCast, I am not a fan of pre-orders anymore at any point. I think that the benefits you get are really, really not there, because, I mean, I have never picked up a game which had been out for quite some time, but was a really good, well-established game, which is why I wanted to come back to it, and I bought it out of the store and felt like I was cheated out because I didn't get a pre-order. There's not a lot of things in those pre-orders which make it worth your while. At the same time, you can get a copy on launch day, because like digital downloads make things so much more easier to get. And the only thing that it does, it just binds you to this thing which isn't out yet and is only sold on the premise of what it might be. And always marketing is meant to mislead you. Like, even like the idea of movie trailers, the entire movie trailer thing, they're allowed to show things which aren't in the movie, which they often do. Movie trailers don't always show everything that's in the movie, or everything a movie trailer that is shown is not always in the movie, because it's meant as a thing to sell. It doesn't need to reflect it accurately. It just needs to sell it. And yeah, that's why I would say don't pre-order.
I don't think that's entirely fair. Maybe there is this point of view when it comes to video games as well. I don't think it's entirely fair to judge the trailers of a movie not having elements in the trailer that is not in the movie, right? The reason why I say this is I have seen so many trailers like, that's what's going to happen in the movie. Go watch the movie. Yep, that's what happened. I hate it. Like, I can always sort of like guess what's going to happen in a movie just from watching a trailer. I watched the Star Trek Into Darkness one. I was like, that's Khan. I was like, what do you mean that's Khan? That's Khan. And lo and behold, Benedict Cumberbatch played Khan. Right? You spot these things from a mile away because of how the trailer just. And I loved the Infinity War trailer because it had misleading stuff in the trailer, so you could not guess what was going to happen in the movie, which I loved. I loved that so much. So maybe there is a similar thing when it comes to video games, but I feel that there is so much more investment in a video game, and it's so much more expensive, that to me it warrants going in knowing a bit more, right? I barely know anything about Cyberpunk 2077. I have watched gameplay videos, I'm more convinced about that being a good game than Doom Eternal.
Yeah, same here. Like I'm not diving in all the depths that I can because I want to be surprised by the game as it unfolds, and it's just that I have a really good sense that it will be good. I might be wrong, but again, I'm not pre-ordering it because I learned my lesson with Anthem last year. I was like, Anthem's gonna be great, and I pre-ordered it, and like the moment that like the launch day, we already knew it was not great. So I was like, I could have bought it on launch day, and then like I could have already realized then that it wasn't gonna be great. So, but yeah, let's see. Some developers should just cut to the chase and make a game called Buggy as Fuck and market it as such. Yes, that would be beautiful.
Yeah, like I'd love it if you're doing this and then it crashes and it takes you to a Windows 98 desktop.
Oh yes.
Just out of hilarity, it's just like, wait, what?
I would love it if you're playing that on a Mac.
Oh my god!
Did you hear about Apple? They're working supposedly on creating a new gaming computer.
Bullshit.
No, they are.
I call bullshit.
Well,
are they seriously?
Yeah, the rumors are pretty serious that they're creating a gaming computer, and the idea is that they're also launching their own games platform, of course, on mobile. So this might tie into that they can like create their own space of like you have your own Apple game service, and you can play it on the Apple.
I'm going to call it here. It's going to cost $10,000. It's
probably going to cost a lot, and you won't probably not be able to modify a lot of it. But hey,
no, you won't be able to modify any of it. It still costs $10,000.
Yep. So they're expecting it to be announced this year, so I'll keep my eyes out for it if it comes around. But that would be pretty fun to see.
It's gonna be like no developer's gonna build for it because the device is gonna be so damn expensive. Like only the rich elite are gonna buy one, and then all the rich elite are gonna be able to do is emulate Windows on it in order to play the games because no one's gonna like unless the games.
Okay.
Like...
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you some other news which might be of interest with this topic. It is expected that Apple is going to buy Sony pretty soon.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
No,
they are. Like, it's not certain, but it's likely. And
how?
Well, I've actually learned this through MatPat's recent video on Film Theory, where he was discussing whether Disney should buy Spider-Man for $10 billion. Because if Apple is going to acquire Sony, then through the contract that Sony has with like the Spider-Man property, because it's being bought by Apple, the rights go back to Marvel without any money to it, so that they'll just get him for free again. But yeah, it's still not certain, but it's likely it could be. And in that case, then Apple owns Sony and probably will own PlayStation, and then
then they wouldn't bother building a new gaming PC. There'd be no reason for it. No, this does not sound like a thing Apple would do. Buying out Sony.
Yeah.
Like, how much would that cost?
I'm not quite sure. Let me look it up.
So are we talking about like the cinema is like because obviously Fox what's it called? When Disney bought Fox Entertainment, they only bought the. I don't think they bought the No, wait, did they buy the TV shows as well? I think they did actually.
They could.
Yeah, maybe they did buy the entirety of Fox. But Fox, Fox doesn't branch out into multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whereas Sony does. It produces hardware, it produces movies, it does video games, it does all sorts of stuff. Like, I cannot. Like, how much would that possibly cost?
Well, it seems that Amazon is also eyeing Sony. Like, these are all rumors, but like it might also be that Amazon might be looking for it to develop beyond their current streaming capabilities. Because of course, Sony is a really big, like, it's got everything. Like, I don't know if you've seen CES recently, but they made their own car. Sony made their own car. Like, it was an electric vehicle, which they made as a prototype just to show off that they can make a car based on everything that they make. Because think about what Sony makes. Like, they make cameras, they make They make PlayStation, they make
Yeah.
speakers, they make literally everything. Televisions, like it's insane. So it's a very worthwhile company. Um, yeah. Uh,
I'm just trying to work out if I can find out how much Sony's worth. I can't easily get a distinct number. But it's just like, no, I cannot envision hold on, that's in yen. 80 billion
yeah, something like
dollars.
that.
20
Like those are the
90.
rumors, and like there's also pieces stating that the Sony CEO is not intent on like letting go of the company and wants to
No,
like not sell it. But like
yeah.
at the same time, if you know how much money like Apple and Amazon make, it's like it's a
No,
very
how
real
much money does
possibility.
Apple make?
Oh, a lot. Okay, so like Apple, do you know the AirPods that they
Yeah.
created? So like a couple of years ago, Apple created they kind of just snipped off the cords of their earphones, and then they took
Yeah.
away the headphone jack, and they said, "We're gonna sell you this thing back at you at an Apple price."
Yeah.
Well, they did, and over the years it's been released. If you were to take if you were to take only the sales of these AirPods, so like the little speakers, the little earphones, wireless earphones, and you were to separate that into a separate company, so you would have Apple AirPods and Apple, then Apple AirPods would be another top 500 company that would be part of the top 500 most profitable companies if you were to just separate that out of Apple and then just make that be its own company. So Apple earns a lot of fucking money, man.
Fuck, what, I don't know why Google ain't getting in on this.
Google is, Google is getting on its own things. Google's got a lot of things going on as well. So Sony's worth is estimated to be $45 billion. So yeah, if they offer
Well, I
80
just saw
billion,
80.
well they're
No,
offering 80.
no, I think like if I was in that situation, I'd probably say like 250 billion. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, like, I don't know what. Oh God, no! 'Cause you just actually, to be fair, if what's it called? Apple bought Sony,
Mm-hmm.
and then Apple priced up all of Sony's products, Sony would just fall out of the gaming platform entirely because no one would be able to fucking afford it.
Yeah, well, like, it could also just be that, like, we don't know. They might be intent on just keeping them around, or like, kind of. I don't know how much Beats is still around as like a relevant thing, but it used to be a very relevant like headphone manufacturer. Like you saw them walk around, it was like the like overpriced, expensive thing. Apple
They're just a
bought it.
fashion statement.
It's part of well, no, Apple acquired it, and now it's just like a. I don't see anyone walking around with that anymore because they're all walking with Apple earphones, which look horrible. But it's like it could also just be bought up and segmented for parts, whereas like PlayStation's division is like, well, that becomes Apple gaming, and like they don't care.
Apple Station.
Yes, the Apple Station, that'd be beautiful. But then again, it's like this is so
The
interesting.
iStation. Sorry.
What?
The iStation.
Oh man, like seriously, I think if you look over the history of video game consoles, it's been a very boring, steady ride for the past few years. It's like like game console companies always came and went. It's like it's surprisingly like insane how long it's been Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft being the only three out there. And yeah, like I'm not hoping that anything is going to change, but like it could. And I really hope that Apple doesn't acquire or Amazon doesn't acquire Sony. I think it's better for everyone, all the consumers, if there are more companies that are contending with each other rather than companies buying out each other. But yeah.
I think, to be honest, out of the two, between between Amazon and Apple, I'd much rather Amazon buy out Sony. But like, They do that, and like all of a sudden, there's no presence of Sony at all in Japan. Like
Yeah.
Japan would just chuck anything Sony related. But the thing
Yeah.
is, like, yeah, like they'd have no interest in selling
No.
because like it's not about earning the money; it's about doing. Anyway.
Yeah. I hope it's not going to happen. It still remains to be a rumor, but it's a rumor that has persisted for a long time. So, who knows? But yeah, we'll see. I'm confident that a $1 trillion company is capable of buying a $45 billion company. The video says they
Yeah,
could.
but they wouldn't buy them for just 45 billion, right?
Yeah.
They would do it for much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So yeah. Anyway, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the chat down below. If you're watching this live, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'll try to respond to them. When it's in the highlights.
Maybe something Cyberpunk 2077 related.
Yeah. How are you guys liking the gameplay that we're showing off right now? I mean, we're doing a talk show right now, podcast about it. So, I mean, I guess it's all right.
To be fair, I could actually just acquire the footage from their own channel and then shove that on.
Actually, okay. I'm not supposed to say this, but
Then
you guys
don't.
just pretend that you didn't hear this and don't tell Cyberpunk about this. But the reason that it actually got delayed is that they wanted to give us more time to grow the FrameCast in the #1 podcast so that they can invite us over for a special pre-release stream. Yeah, we just need a little more time. So don't tell them that. That was strictly NDA. But yeah, that's the real reason why it's got delayed. So as soon as the FrameCast reaches 1 million downloads, Cyberpunk is good to go. So get on it, guys.
Oh my god, you just envision. But yeah, no, seriously, if you guys are interested in what you've listened to, we are streaming every Tuesday at 7 p.m. GMT, 8 p.m. Central European Time, and 2 p.m.
Eastern
America time.
Mm-hmm.
Every Tuesday.
Yep.
Likewise, what else? The recording will go out 24 hours later on youtube.com/Postma. No, wait. Yeah, it is Postma
Yeah,
Games.
Postma Games.
Yeah. And then the highlights will come out later in the week at some point, maybe even the following week, because I forgot to tell someone to upload it for me because I have a shit internet connection. Whoops. And yeah, so you'll find those at youtube.com/Xenogalleon. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, if you've enjoyed what you've listened to or seen during this episode, please consider subscribing to either of our Patreons. The money does eventually go to Michelle anyway, so it's fine. So you can either do that at patreon.com/Michelle Postma or patreon.com/Xenogalleon. The money does seriously help because it allows us to fight the evil rebellion that is known as YouTube with its search algorithm of doom, preventing anyone that is just trying to start out as a content creator or even doing it for so many years actually get somewhere, because thanks YouTube with your algorithm. Wink. And yeah, so I see one question, or is it two?
One. The video asks, have you heard about the mini controversy about CD Projekt Red's statement that they're going to have to impose crunch? If so, what are your thoughts? So I looked into this. Basically, after the delay and during an Infesta Q&A, the studio was asked whether the development team would be required to put in crunch hours in order to meet the September 17th deadline, to which the answer was that, unfortunately, it's very likely that they will have to go for a period of crunch, which means, like, over hours, extra...
Who the fuck doesn't? Right? Everyone gets this. Like, oh, look, we are doing well. We are doing... Oh, no, I found a bug. Oh, God, it's a horrible bug. We're supposed to release this tomorrow. Whatever will we do? Get everyone on it. Mm-hmm. You know, it happens all the time. You can't expect it to be crunchless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like... Fuck, if you could name me a game that was crunchless, I'd be impressed.
If you name a profession that was crunchless entirely, it's like, I think that everyone, no matter what job you do, there will be periods of crunch, and depending on like when it comes to game releases, it's very clear that towards the release you can expect crunch. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is gonna happen now," but I mean, we've had times when, like when I was working in the chocolate factory, I was quite literally had times where things just needed to get done, and like you need to continue to work, and like you have it with everything. Some jobs have it more or less than others, but at the same time, it's like there are times when things need to get done and things happen to get in the way, and then like you need to work harder. Like nothing goes as planned, and everyone tries to schedule things as much as they can because the more you can do, the more profitable it will be. So yeah, I mean it's gonna happen. I hope that everyone will be alright with the developers there. I hope that they take it responsibly, but it's their prerogative.
Yeah, like honestly, if you could name me a developer post 2010, maybe even 2005, I think
Mhm.
2005. If you could name me a developer post 2005 that did not have a crunch period in their development, I'd be fucking impressed. I genuinely would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Even
I'm sure
even when they're paying overtime, like seriously, yeah. I mean, if they're like if people are being paid for overtime, like if they're not being overpaid, but if they're not being paid, then that's really bad. But if they're being paid, like yeah, it comes part of it. And if you don't like it, like the harsh truth is that like if it's just like yeah, as Solo says, if crunch is a standard operating procedure, it's a problem, but you can't get rid of it. Like the world, if the world would turn every day beautifully if all the problems happen during work hours and you could just go home at 5 p.m. and everything would be fine and it would just wait for you until you would clock into work the next day. So basically, if you were a police officer and you were on a chasing a criminal and it's 5 p.m. and you both look at your watch and you just turn the car to the road, you're like, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah,
and like we're just gonna go have some dinner, and then like the next morning at 8 p.m. it's like, oh, you're ready, and then they're gonna chase again. It doesn't work that way. The world will turn. There are things that happen, there are things that need to be done. If you can't deal with that, it's like grow up a little bit.
I think the problem is if crunch becomes a standard operating procedure, then there is a mismanagement problem.
Yeah.
Right? Because no one wants to experience that, and if it keeps happening, then it's a problem. Right?
Absolutely.
I have that at my job, and we're going to start like imposing, nope, you can't do this anymore. And if they say why not, well then, you know, like, oh, they refuse to acknowledge that they can't do it anymore, then they can turn to the client and apologize and give the client their money back because we're refusing to do it now.
Anyway, I think we're gonna end it on that note. Thank you guys so much for listening this time. Also, be sure to check out Xeno on youtube.com/XenoGelion. Check out his video that he recently made and consider supporting his Patreon. He needs the support direly, and it will be great if you could share awareness, spread awareness, whatever. Give him all the wobbly wobbly woof. Where did that come from? You have it all in every description.
Wibbly wobbly love.
Yeah,
it's a Doctor Who reference.
Oh, okay.
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff.
Nice. So check out his channel if you haven't done that yet. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Same time, same bat channel. See you guys around, eh?
Same bat time, same bat channel.
See, I was so bad, I forgot about that.